Hello, my name is Katy Lang, and I am presenting my senior year experience project. Um, my only space in my house right now is in the dining room, hanging up on the glass windows, with the table a little bit further away, so I'm going to walk up, show you the posters, explain them to you, and then answer my questions. So up first we have the significant education institutions and places that I have dealt with throughout my educational career. Of course, my camera's going to show it backwards, so that's nice. Up first, we have the Dane Kindergarten Center. We go to kindergarten at a different building, or we used to when I started in 1997. We had gym in the basement along with music, and we had the same teacher for both of them. It was pretty entertaining. Then we went on to Lodi Primary School. When I began, that was grades 1 through 5, and by the time I was ready to move on to 3rd grade, we had switched schools and built a new middle school. It's a sad part in my life now because they are closing down that building and building a new one. Lodi Elementary School is where I attended grades 3 through 5 from 2000 to 2003. It was wonderful, and I've done a lot of my sub-experience there in the last few years and done a lot of work. So super excited that I got to go to school there and experience that at a professional level. We have Lodi Middle School, Lodi High School from the years 2003 through 2010. We rotate over this way, kind of swing back around. UW-Platteville is where I got my first bachelor's degree at. I graduated 4 years ago last week with a bachelor's degree in history with a minor in political science. I absolutely loved my time there. I gave tours to incoming students or prospective students. I worked in the student center to help students that were on campus, and I worked in the library as well. Definitely very involved on campus there and absolutely loved my time. Loved my time there, but also took the opportunity to leave that campus for a little bit and spend 2 weeks in China. Definitely a huge part of my educational journey was spending time in China. I went with a class from UW-Platteville with a professor, which was great because China seems like a really intimidating place to go for your first time out of the country. And we managed to go through 6 cities. So we started in Hong Kong and worked our way up to Beijing. We had the opportunity to see Wisconsin-based businesses. We had the opportunity to see campuses for college students, and those college students gave us tours around those universities, explained to us what their daily life schedule was like, how often they got to leave campus, and some of those universities we found out they have to have proficiency in about 4 languages before they're allowed to graduate. So it was really interesting to see the dynamic differences. And then, of course, we went to see the cultural visits, so we saw the Terracotta Warriors, the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden City, and so many more places. It was a great opportunity. That was in March of 2012, and then in the fall semester of 2013, I decided to branch out and spend a full semester abroad in the Netherlands. I went to Zwolle, Netherlands, and I went to the Windesheim University of Applied Sciences to study international business with some cross-cultural communications classes. And at the time, I just needed credits to graduate college. I knew I wanted to go abroad. I didn't know where. There was a really difficult toss-up between Ankara, Turkey, or the Netherlands. Ultimately decided on going to the Netherlands. Definitely one of the biggest parts of my educational journey. Getting to know how to work with people from other cultures, how you get to know those other cultures before you work with them. Just all those little details that you don't really think about. Timeliness, the motivation level, the goals that different people have, and what they expect when they meet with you. Definitely a very interesting experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. After going to the Netherlands, I had one more semester at UW-Platteville before heading off into the real world. And my first job was at Cottingham and Butler in Dubuque, Iowa. I was a client service representative for a truck insurance brokerage firm. During my interview, I remember them asking me, "Do you see yourself working in insurance? Have you ever thought about insurance?" I said no. I had always known I didn't really want to work in a cubicle, but I liked the idea of living in Dubuque. I loved the city and everything that it had to offer, so I gave it a shot. And it was a really wonderful opportunity. I absolutely loved everything that I did. I actually was trained on my book of business in 2 weeks. It's supposed to be a 2-month training process. And then I started training new employees. So over the course of my 15 months at Cottingham and Butler, I really fell in love with that training process, that teaching others how to do something. And it made me remember that one of my first programs at UW-Platteville was in education. So I took that opportunity to kind of think about what I wanted, where I wanted to go, and decided that I was going to move home and go back to school, where I got my 3-year substitute license, worked for 4 school districts, and spent my first semester trying to dig through and determine what grade level I wanted to be at, and ended up deciding on UW Superior online program to get my elementary education degree in grades 1 through 8 with a minor in social studies and that ultimate dream of teaching middle school. Down here, still backwards, I have the education significant persons and events. Obviously, my mom is a huge supporter of me in everything that moms do. She let me come back home. She let me use her home while I went to school. Just absolutely wonderful opportunities. On here, I have Mrs. Dolson, my kindergarten teacher. Absolutely amazing. Mrs. Peterson in 1st grade. Mrs. Sager in 4th grade. She just really stood out to me as a student because I was with her for 9/11, and she handled it remarkably. It was her first year in the district. We still kind of recount what happened. She's one of my mentors now, and I recounted with her that day. My first day ever being a substitute teacher was on 9/11 in a freshman history class, and after we watched CNN 10, realized that these students weren't alive during 9/11 when they started asking questions on when do you think we learned about this? And that was something that was really hard for me to think about, and she was definitely a huge influence in helping me, along with Mr. Jelinek, my 8th grade social studies teacher, absolutely wonderful, now the assistant principal at the high school. He knew how to make learning fun, make social studies fun, come up with fun activities to do that made students who were really hesitant to like social studies absolutely love their time in that class. Mrs. Easley was my high school homeroom teacher, English teacher, and a forensics coach. Wonderful human being. She gave me one of the things that's in my significant artifacts that we'll get to in a little bit. Mr. Cole, also a high school teacher. He taught U.S. history as well as being my personal forensics coach, so he helped me to perfect my speeches and allowed me to do very well in most of the competitions that we went to, and now I get to be a judge and a forensics coach myself at my alma mater, so that's absolutely wonderful. Professor Travis Nelson at UW-Platteville. He was political science. He was also my minor advisor, encouraged me to do any travel abroad, and was a wonderful supporter whenever I needed it for any family issues or personal issues that would come up during my time at UW-Platteville. Jenny Loads down here, she was my study abroad advisor. She had wonderful education abroad opportunities herself and knew how to make them accessible and seem like you could do that as a general student at UW-Platteville. Helped me to find a program that fit my credit needs, even if it didn't fit my major, because that wasn't my main concern, but something that would be relatable to life outside of UW-Platteville, and she absolutely nailed it on the head. And then my big event was at Education Abroad, learning how to work with others, learning how to get to cultural goals with others, everything like that. Timeline number 3, all different theories that I studied and learned at UW Superior between 2016 and 2018, since I've been going to school there. Up top, the inquiry learning theory, allowing students to ask questions and be a part of the classroom. I never thought about that. I just kind of assumed, I'll give students a syllabus, we'll work on this is what we're going to do. But the more I worked with kids, getting them to understand why we're doing something, what ways do they learn best, differentiated learning, understanding that everybody does learn differently, even if it's not the way I like to learn or my best way of preparing something, but trying to work outside of that box and allowing students to get that opportunity to do something. Would they rather write a paper, do a project, have a presentation? Do they want to write a play? Present that to the class? All these different opportunities for students to do. And I really like how those two work together. I have a nice wheel here because all of these work together. Behaviorism and social cognitive theory, getting students to work together, give them positive feedback. So even if you're directing a comment at one individual and saying, like, I really like it when we get this ready for the class and we're waiting for directions as they're given. You're giving that to one student without calling out that name, but the whole class is hearing it. Versus having a negative feedback where you ask one student in particular to move a clip down, which is just, it calls them out, it makes them feel bad, and it doesn't promote a good learning environment for those that are in there, both teachers, staff that walk by, or the students. So creating students to get a positive feedback, positive life, have fun in your classroom, feel like they're involved in the decision-making process, like what activity should we do, what battle would you like to cover during this incident, is there a read-aloud book that you would prefer, not giving them full access to every option out there, but perhaps giving them a choice of 5 to 10 and then doing a class vote, or allowing them to give a persuasive speech, using something that they've learned in literacy to say why we should do something over another thing, and then making sure that learning's accessible for everybody. What do you prefer? What would you like the most? Down here I have my significant artifacts. So up top we have my fall semester at Windesheim in the Netherlands, and that one is definitely one of my favorites. Definitely is a big part of who I am today and how I got to be where I am. In the middle I have 2 independent studies that I completed in history for 3 credits apiece. The Battle of the Little Bighorn I did in the spring of 2013, and then Through British Eyes, the American Revolution I completed in the spring of 2014, right before graduation, just examining what happened from the British perspective of the American Revolution, and since that's something that we don't hear much about. Over on the far end we have Taking Positive Steps of Service. My first year substitute teaching in 2015-2016, I subbed over 150 out of 180 days in one school district, and I was employed by 3. So I think I had maybe 4 or 5 days off during that school year and worked the rest of them as a substitute teacher in a variety of classrooms. I have my Who Am I poster that I completed in our art education class. That is one of the artifacts that I have picked out right now to show you guys. It allowed me to get creative. I used a picture from my childhood, just being carefree and showing that we can still be that way, we can still have fun. Examining who you were as a child might help to examine or think about how children are thinking in your classroom. The Backwards Dog is a book by a local author in Waunakee, Wisconsin, and it just shows that being normal isn't always what you think it is. So this dog walks backwards instead of forward. He chases his ball backwards, and that's what makes him him. And understanding that people have differences, and that is what's normal about life. And going back to Mrs. Easley, my high school homeroom teacher and education teacher, English education, I gave her this book called Soul Retreat for Teachers as a freshman in high school for Christmas, and I met up with her for dinner a couple weeks ago, and she actually gave it back to me, so that was really exciting. So the 4 artifacts that I have brought out for you is The Backwards Dog. It is by Corina K. Rogers out of Waunakee, Wisconsin, and I just absolutely love everything that's in it. To embrace being different. I have the Soul Retreats for Teachers, so after a difficult day, you can open it up and read some of it. I have my Who Am I poem from that picture as a child, putting in all the glitter, the glory, thinking about who I am as a person, who I was as a person, how I got there. And of course, my Taking Positive Steps of Service award for doing that over 150 days and giving back to the community in any way that I really could. Some of the questions I wanted to address is to talk about a relationship between an artifact and the rest of your timeline. Going back to that semester when I first started substitute teaching, I hadn't picked a program yet. And this helped me through subbing to decide that I didn't want to do grades 6 to 8. Instead, I wanted to do more of that upper elementary middle school level. So it led me to UW Superior, where I was able to go online and get my 1 to 8 elementary education degree. A single most important event on my timeline has to be education abroad. It taught me how to work with different cultures, why you need to understand the differences in cultures. We do mock business meetings where some people might show up late, might be rude to shake with a right hand or touch somebody with a left hand, so forth. And getting to know others truly before starting anything else. So getting to know your students before you start class to find out the way they best learn, how they want to participate in the class, things like that. Definitely a great event that happened to me that showed me how I could use that in education. So while that wasn't the goal while I was studying abroad, it wasn't even a blimp on my radar yet, definitely something that I can apply to today. What is the convergence of people, places, and philosophies, beliefs, theories most prominent? I wrote in my reflection that I thought these posters should be a positive experience, a positive reflection. I couldn't handle the negativity that was happening in my life after a very poor student teaching semester and ending on Monday and having stuff go down. I didn't want to work on this project. I was done. I was exhausted. I didn't want to continue. But as I went through and looked back on everything that I've completed over the last 2 years, I realized how positive education is, what I want to accomplish in a classroom. So working with that cooperating teacher, the university supervisors, and how UW Superior has your back as a student, and what it's like to have positive reinforcement and praise in the classroom, that PBIS support system is amazing, and that this project really helped me to realize that. That kind of works with describing my reflection preparation for today. Not everything's negative, and it took a few days for me to kind of piece that one back together, but this really helped me discover what I wanted to do in education and that I really do want to continue it and find a job for the fall semester. Also works for a time when there was conflict or incompatibility. My student teaching had very negative connotations to it. We had students move clips down, had to call them out on it, to the point where students said that they didn't care if they were moving their clip down or they wanted to stay inside for recess or they wanted to be punished. Realizing that something needed to change there and trying to do that, writing the students nice notes, trying to give them test prep, trying to give them a positive environment around them as much as I could. A point that cemented commitment to teaching profession, definitely Cottingham and Butler when I had that opportunity to train new employees, do handbooks. I gave them a 6-week notice before I left, so they trained me on their new system that they were getting. I helped train new employees, current employees, and write how-to handbooks for how to complete different tasks after I was gone. Given the timeline of where I stand now, prediction for the future, probably continuing to go on adventures. Not ending here, but perhaps moving to a different state, going for a different license, expanding on my career, maybe doing a different license within education, within a different state, but not staying put in Wisconsin, but seeing what else is out there and where else I can help to make the world better. Maybe adding a TESOL degree and going abroad, or going to a Title I school, a low-income school, something like that where I can do more good than what I think I can do now, but expanding on it and continuing to grow as an individual. I look forward to seeing everybody else's presentations, and I hope you liked mine. Thanks.